Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Stewart Kraintz. Super excited for our guest today. Definitely brings a breadth of experience and expertise. He is somebody that is a costume fabricator and makeup artist. He has worked on numerous television and movie projects and has been featured as a contestant on seasons 10 and 13 of the show Face Off, which debuted on the SciFi channel. Super excited to have him on and get his perspective. Excited to welcome Walter Welsh to the show. Thanks for being here today, Walter.
My pleasure. Nice intro. I like that.
Wanted to do right by you, my friend. And I wanted to kick this off because what you do, I think, is really cool and also not the everyday career path for most people. So, how did you initially get into costume fabrication, makeup artistry? We'll go from there.
I was I did a lot of like struggling figuring out what I wanted to do, like a lot of us did, back then. And I kind of just hopped around. I went to junior college after high school, thought I wanted to do architecture, and then I found out I didn't like that and moved on to the next thing. And then I wanted to be a personal trainer and didn't like that. And
Mhm.
thought I was going to go back and play football and hated that. So I just kind of hopped and hopped and hopped until I landed on something. And throughout the whole time, I kind of was doing art just as
Yeah.
a hobby and because it was what made me feel good. And I also started working with, I always wanted to learn how to airbrush.
Mhm.
So I had bought an airbrush and I was also that summer, summer of like 2009 or 10, I was working in a auto body shop and we were working on a car that I had and also just helping with buddy stuff. And so I was learning how to paint and do body shop work, stuff like that, Bondo,
Mhm.
fiberglass. And this show on Face Off, this show on Sci-Fi called Face Off was on. It was like, for those who don't know, it's like just like the Ink Master, the tattoo shows, the cooking shows. They're all same blueprint, competition, reality,
Mhm.
TV. And I saw that on Sci-Fi Channel, and I started really getting hooked. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I didn't really even, I'd always been like a huge movie fan, but I didn't really know that that was a profession.
Mhm.
And, I knew nothing about it. I've never had anybody show me anything or anything like that other than when I watched this show. And they always talked about these two schools on the show, Cinema Makeup School and Tom Savini School in Pennsylvania. And I looked into both, and Pennsylvania was out of the question because it was so much more money. It was a longer program, and I had to move to Pennsylvania. Whereas Cinema Makeup School was in Los Angeles. So, and that was a much easier move for me. It's only about 5.5 hours away from home. So um, I was like, wow, I'm going to look into this more. I had already completed my AA at junior college and transferred into a 4 year. And I was about halfway, maybe three quarters of the way done with my 4 year, my bachelor's degree. And I didn't want to waste all the time that I put into that. So I said, well, let me finish, get this degree. And then as soon as I'm done, I'm gonna go to LA. I'm gonna go do this. And I just followed that path, went to LA, went to the school, and I kind of did my best and was a little bit of a standout and got hired into a studio right out of school, working on the show Grimm for
Wow.
a, a studio down there, Barney Berman's studio, B2 Effects. And that's where I learned a bunch just under his wing and the shop manager there, Nick Reisinger's wing, and learned a bunch and kind of just continued developing until I just totally ran out of money and had to come back home after about a year and a half down in LA. And when I was back home, just trying to figure out what I was going to do next, the show called me and said, "Would you like to be on the show?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I went
Mhm.
through the whole audition process. I kind of got streamlined because I went to the school that sponsors and promotes it. But it was a really cool experience. It's like the world's best boot camp.
Yeah, I can only imagine it was not only an amazing opportunity to get your work, your talent showcased, but also to push you a bit further in terms of competition, trying to stand out against the other contestants. I want to dial it back for 1 second though. So you were pursuing a traditional collegiate degree, going the normal school route, and then you diverted your focus and attention to attending the makeup artistry school. And I would love to hear what type of adversity you faced in that decision, and maybe if anybody was doubting you, and what supported you in following through on a dream like this.
Well, I luckily, I have my dad has always been a huge supporter. My parents were very supportive and just kind of let me do whatever I wanted, really. Whatever they thought that would be best for me. I kind of wish that I had parents who had more of a direction lined up for me, but mine were kind of like, yeah, we'll do whatever you want to do. Because I wasted a ton of time going to junior college and then going to 4 year, and I took my absolute time doing both of those, and
Mhm.
I really wasted so much time. If I could go back and do it all over again, I probably would have tried to get into this, right out of high school. But again, I didn't even know about it. So I guess you have to do what you got to do to learn. But I don't know, adversity, just not knowing things and having to screw up and learn it the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, and to that point, I'm sure you can agree. I bet your work now is significantly better, more polished, possibly more creative than the work that you were doing when you first started out. Could you talk to us a bit about the creative process for you, what that looks like, where you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, well, a lot of my inspiration I draw from, the intense movie library that most of us have. I've always been obsessed with movies, especially science fiction movies. I've loved the Star Wars and Predator, and I'm a crazy Aliens fan. I draw a lot of inspiration just from the movies that I loved growing up. Um, but yeah, I would say along with the creative process, it's funny. So I have always kind of said that you learn with everything that you do. You learn with every makeup that you do in the makeup world. Whenever you do something that's like not necessarily something that you're getting paid for, but something that you have to come up with creatively, like the whole thing, like your own original thing, you learn the most from that. And what was cool about the show is in a typical working year, I don't do many things like original from my own creativity. It's usually like I get a concept design from a concept artist, and hey, can you recreate this hand? Can you recreate this head? Can you copy this character from this video game or this show, or can you make me this costume? It's a lot of reproduction of something that already exists. I don't often get to do my own thing,
Mhm.
and so when you do, I feel like that's what pushes you artistically the farthest. And on the show, what was really good is in 13 episodes, I got to do 13, maybe sometimes 15, 16 different makeups within a season because I was on the whole season for both times I was on the show. And I think we did 15 makeups on 10 and we did 16 makeups on 13. And in a normal year, I might do one or two original makeups, in my spare time. But on the show, I got 15, 16. So it was almost like fast tracking my learning process because I got to do 15 makeups in a year versus one. So like I got to make those mistakes because with every makeup I do or make a design I do, I learn from the mistakes or the little happy accidents that happen. Oh wow, that happened and I really like the way that looked. So it was a really cool fast track to my learning experience.
Thank you so much for sharing a bit more about that. I love what you said about kind of leaning into the happy accidents and using the art of creation as a tool to get better at creating. I feel like so often people are so attached to the end result in mind that it actually prevents them from even getting started, whether it's writing a book or pursuing a career in you know movie production, thinking that or making the goal so big that they fail to even get started. Have you overcome anything like that yourself, or is
Oh,
it?
oh yeah. It's
Mhm.
so like you were saying, some people you almost like fear the start, or you think you're not good enough, or you think like, wow, that may be a little too hard. I go into almost every single job I get with that same fear. And I have to create a schedule. I say, okay, if there's always a deadline in this industry, you always have to finish on by this shoot date, or it has to be turned in because we're going to shoot here, or we're going to take conceptual photography, or whatever it may be. There's always a deadline that you have to have your product finished by.
Mhm.
And so you have to say, okay, I know this is going to take me 3 weeks, or I know this is going to take me 4 weeks. So I'll set out and schedule the plan for whatever it is that I make. And I'm often procrastinating the start date until the very last second, because like oftentimes like I don't know if I can do it as good as I could, or so and so could do it better than I could do it. I'm constantly second guessing myself. But the show really did help in that you're forced 3 days. We have to do a makeup in 21 hours. And typical makeup, a rushed makeup might be a month. And we were doing things in
Wow.
21. So you're kind of forced to make quick decisions and sit with your decisions. Whereas, like, if I'm working professionally and I have a month to do something, I may get it all the way to completion, look at it, and stare at it, and then go, wow, I don't really like that. What if I do this differently? And that can be cool because you can come up with something even better because you had time to sit with it and develop it. But sometimes it's a hindrance, and it can, I don't know, make you take way longer than you should have. And it happens to me all the time, But on the show, you were forced to be done. Like if we had 5 hours in the first day, I had to be done at 5 hours, and you just had to live with whatever you did in 5 hours. And that was a great exercise, and an exercise that I continue to try to do today. So I'll set out goals for each day, and I'll say, okay, like currently I'm working on this hand thing, and I'll say, well, if we're working on Monday, I need to get all the textures done. Or Tuesday, I have to get it molded by Tuesday. Wednesday, I have to get it casted. I'll set out mandatory deadlines for myself each day so that I can get the thing done on time. And no matter where I'm at the end of the day, I stick with the deadline. If I said I'm going to mold it on Wednesday, even if I don't like it and I wish I had 4 more hours or 2 more hours or even 1 hour, I'll just mold it wherever it's at. So because I got to get that thing done.
Yeah. And folks, I know we're talking about movie makeup, but this is applicable to any pursuit that you might be going through. Setting yourself deadlines and holding yourself to them, like no shit, is a great productivity hack. It's a way of to overcome the perfectionism, which is what I'm hearing Walter share here. We want to be putting out our best work all the time, but sometimes we don't have the ability to keep reiterating, and we have to get things done. Is there anything in your career that you've produced that maybe you didn't love, but the end customer or the movie studio or the end user raved about?
Oh yeah, I'm my worst critic. I hate everything I do. So uh, when I finish something, I the first thing. Sometimes when I finish something, the first initial feeling is I'm proud that I finished it and I got it done on time. But oftentimes it's I could have did this a little bit better. Man, I'm just now noticing the left side isn't perfectly symmetrical to the right side. I'm my own worst critic. When somebody leaves me a nasty comment, it's probably a comment I've already thought about myself. So yeah, there's lots of times. I mean, I've had things where I've turned in and the client didn't like it, and it feels terrible. And I've had things that I turned in that I didn't like and the client loved it, and it feels good. I'm someone, I know people that just don't care what other people think. That's not me. I constantly stress and care about what other people think of my work and myself. So I want everybody to like me and I want everybody to like my work. So it does suck when someone says, they're not happy with my work or they're not happy with what you did. But I remember in football years ago in high school, a coach once said you have to have temporary amnesia. And it's so true. You get a bad call, some bad feedback on something, you got to forget about it and move on to the next project, or otherwise you'll dwell on it. I've suffered and I've done that myself. I've got some bad critiques on things, and some people said some bad things about me, and I've dwelled on it and lost productivity and sat on it for more days than I wish I had. But it's really important to kind of just move on, forget about it, and start the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for speaking into that. So we were just discussing perfectionism, being our hardest critic. Kind of the ugly cousin to that I find is imposter syndrome. In the arena that you're in, where you have legendary makeup artists, visual effects studios, all that, I'm sure that you have dealt with imposter syndrome in your time, feeling like you don't belong, wondering if you're ever going to cut it. Was there a moment when you built that credibility with yourself? And if so, what was that?
I don't know. I don't know that I still feel the imposter syndrome thing. I see my peers within the industry, and I don't look like I fit in with anybody. And I don't know. I'm constantly at conflict with that idea that I don't fit in within the industry. Like, I
Mhm.
can say oftentimes my work feels like it fits in, but yeah, I don't have a lot of the similar interests as people within the industry, and I don't dress the same. I don't look the same. So it definitely is, sometimes can, I don't know, I feel a little out of place. But at the same time, when we do share interests in movie making and movies, that's kind of all that matters, because that's what we're all here to do, is make a movie or make a television show, or create a monster, create a creature. So all that other stuff doesn't really matter, but it is hard to notice and not think about from time to time.
So I hear you about feeling like maybe you don't fit the mold about what it means to be a an artist in this industry. Do you find though that being different allows you to set yourself apart in making a name for yourself, building your brand, so on and so forth?
I don't know. I haven't really, I don't know. I don't know that I've experienced too much of that. I try not to focus on the fitting in or standing out aspect as much as I just want to do good work and I just want people to like it.
Mhm.
So, you know, I just try to do my best and have a good attitude about everything. And something that's really important to me, because when we work on set, we deal with so many different people. I just want people to enjoy working with me. So, like, I try to be as helpful as possible. I'm a yes man. You ask me to do something, I don't often turn it down. I say yes to most jobs, and I just try to be a pleasure to work with no matter what. So I try to show up on time. I try to come over prepared. So if you're missing something, I usually got it. I want to be the guy that people are like, "Ah, I actually really liked working with him." So I try not to worry too much about the fitting in thing. That's often just those weird thoughts that rumble in the back of your head that you don't too often bring to the forefront. You tell your friends and your partner or whatever, but you don't really. I try not to dwell on it, and I try not to, like, think too much about it. It's just sometimes, like, typically in my industry, everybody's like covered in tattoos and has crazy hairstyles, and I don't know. There's definitely a stereotype that I haven't often fit in, um, and nothing's wrong with those things. It's just not me.
Yeah. I acknowledge you for continuing to be who you are and choosing not to try to conform to fit a look, to fit a mold, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm actually feel like I hear what you're saying is it's about the work, it's about providing a quality service, which is super niche. And I would love to just kind of pick your brain. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to rub shoulders, rub elbows, so to speak, with some pretty awesome people up to big things in the movie and television space, and maybe you can't name names, but would love to hear a time or an experience you had that either brought inspiration to you or that made you realize that this was the career path for you.
There's lots of different things that have happened that have been really cool that I've definitely looked back and go, man, I love this. One of the first ones when as soon as I graduated from cinema makeup school, you can apply to do a convention makeup. It's like
Mhm.
a demonstration to kind of advertise for the school. And when you're in school, everybody wants this and everybody applies, and not everybody gets to do it. It's like they maybe go to 4 or 5 conventions a year, and maybe 4 or 5 students get to participate in a demo. And I got selected for one of the demos at San Diego Comic Con.
Wow.
And I had never been to San Diego Comic Con. I never, up until that point, I had been to one convention with some buddies, and I did really, really like it. But I hadn't really got into that world too much. I went to WonderCon in San Francisco like in 2009 or 10, something like that. And then the following year, all my buddies liked it so much, we went again when it was in Anaheim the following year. And those are really the only conventions I had been to. Comic-Con conventions, for those who don't know, it's like a big showcase of pop culture and entertainment within the movie, film world, the comic book world, kind of all meshes together today. And so the conventions are a way that movies announce trailers, actors come out and promote whatever it is that they're working on, whether it's Pedro Pascal coming and talking about The Mandalorian or, for example, stuff like that. They'll showcase costumes that they are featured in the films, random stuff like that. Conventions are a lot of fun. And so I was really looking forward to San Diego because it's the big one. It's the biggest convention in the whole world. They say like 250,000 people come
Wow.
to San Diego for this one thing. So, and it's like a quarter of San Diego's revenue that happens in a week for the city of San Diego. So it's pretty crazy. Don't quote me on any of those stats. I don't know how accurate they are, but it's around there. And so I got to do that. We did Apocalypse from X-Men, and I did that with some other classmates and one of my teachers at cinema makeup school. And it was so cool to be on the convention floor representing my school and just everybody watching and asking questions, and I really, really enjoyed it. And since then, I go to Comic Con every single year. I get professional badges, and I try to show up with a makeup every single year and showcase my work and pass out business cards and try to drum up some other business just from all the people that come into San Diego. It's kind of like a massive networking event for me. And I go to a lot of other conventions. It's definitely partly a hobby, but also just a major networking scheme for me.
Mhm.
So it's a big portion of my business is just going to these conventions and networking, meeting people, and trying to get more business from like-minded folks or the cosplay community, because a lot of cosplayers, they want the best costume. They go to these conventions and spend thousands of dollars to look like their favorite superhero or video game character or whatever it is. So I try to help those guys and kind of cater to the cosplay community. And like I sell costume parts and prosthetic pieces and stuff online to try to cater to that community. So that was one thing that definitely, the first time I did, I was like, oh man, I got to do more of this. This is so much fun. Another time, just working on movies. I love working on set when you're working, and when the times that I have, it's amazing. I'm like, oh, I want to do this forever. It pays the best. It's the most fun. The only thing that kind of there's a negative to that is if I'm on set for 14 hours, you're only working like 3, maybe 4,
Ooh.
and the other 8, 9 hours you're on set, you're doing nothing. You might run up and powder someone's face really quickly, but for the most part, it's a hurry up and wait situation, and it's I mean, there's people who love it. They bring a book or they bring a tablet and draw. They get other work done. I am a busybody. I have to be doing things with my hands. So when there's 8 hours of downtime, it's torture for me. I'll eat and get fat and snack, and that's about all that I do on set. So but it is, nothing feels better than when you complete a makeup on set and it gets sent to the set and filming starts beginning and you get to see behind the camera what your thing looks like that you just created and you spent 3 hours on. Or and many times it's a culmination of, maybe we just spent 2 months working on this creature and then 3 hours to put it together on set, and then we get to go see it film. But it was we spent a month, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 months on this full creature that is, I mean, we've done things that are over 100 pieces that you glue to someone, and
Wow.
it becomes this real life thing that you guys you took from concept to sculpture to creature. And it's extremely rewarding and fulfilling when you finally see it for the first time behind the camera. And you hear everybody on set kind of like, wow, that's incredible. The director's like, oh man, this looks so good. When everybody's juiced about your work on set, nothing feels better, and it does make up for the 8 hours of downtime.
Yeah. I definitely remember the times I'd be walking down random streets in New York City when I was living there for a couple years, and you would see an entire city block just shut down because a scene was getting filmed. And I was always blown away how many people it took just to film maybe like a couple minute scene in front of one building. And
That seconds scene,
yeah,
oftentimes 10-second scene.
yeah, and just to your point, just the hurry up and wait, but everybody plays a role, and
Yeah,
you know everybody has to be a part of making the as you said, the pieces that you put together fit into the puzzle to make the scene believable.
yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of your favorite monsters, characters, creations that you've been able to either be a part of or spearhead that have made it onto the screen?
Most of the notable things that I worked on are probably from the show Grimm. And I really didn't do any designing or sculpting or anything. Like when I worked at that studio, I did silicone casting. So we'd cast some of the prosthetics and I helped with a bunch of molds. So we'd do the fiberglass molds for a bunch of the things. I was mostly like a shop hand.
Mhm.
Whatever they did help with, I would help out, and I was the runner. So I'd be the guy getting all the material all over the valley in LA. The stuff I did on the show, definitely a lot of things I'm really proud of. My finale makeup on season 10, the guy was 6'9" or 6'10", give or take,
Wow.
and we glued over 100 pieces to him. So, and that was four of us. We glued over 100 pieces to this 6'9" massive human, and that was really really cool. And when we saw that thing all put together, we glued like a dozen bags of moss all over them. It was very very cool.
This is something that you hit on a little bit earlier, and I wanted to circle back. I think that a lot of people have dreams of pursuing something creatively. Again, doesn't have to be, costume design, movie makeup, but either they want to write a book, they want to write a screenplay, they want to get into film, they want to be a musician, and they don't know how to start necessarily. I have heard from many people that it's as much the skill and the talent and also who you know. I feel like networking is almost treated like a four-letter word in terms of this thing you got to go out and do. What has the role of developing relationships been in this industry been like for you? And what are some of the lessons that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I would, first off, if there's anybody out there, like if I could go back and just talk to myself, my younger self, and give a few words of advice, I would tell myself to just go for it earlier.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, we have this idea of what we want to do or what we want to start, and we're just so scared that we might screw it up that we put it off. Sometimes we put it off for a year, sometimes a decade. And if I could go back, I wish I would have started sooner, and I wish I would have just tried things a lot sooner. Like currently, I'm trying to teach myself how to digitally draw, like on an
Nice.
iPad, and do 3D renderings because I'm getting into like 3D printing, and I love that whole aspect. A lot of the industry that I work in is pushing towards 3D stuff. So I'm just now forcing myself to get into it. But I've been saying I was going to do this for the last 4 years, and I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't want to spend the money. I didn't want to spend the money and then waste it. And I just kind of procrastinated. And you should just go for it. If you know you want to give something a try, it's never a bad thing to invest in yourself. And that was what I would tell my younger self. As far as the networking thing, that is a skill in its own. To be able to talk to people, to be able to promote yourself, to be able to make it sound like you're someone you want to work with, it's a skill. It's I don't know if if you'd consider it a social skill or a professional skill, but it's definitely a skill to market yourself in a way that doesn't sound like advertising. Like you're able to talk with someone easily, and you're able to drum up conversation or create likes and interests that just make it easy to start conversation, so that when you leave an impression of yourself that goes, wow, that guy was really easy to talk to, or that girl was kind of cool to be around, or man, we shared a lot of the same interests. I've found it that I can find a common interest with anybody. So
Hmm.
that's the first thing I try to do when I meet somebody. Is oftentimes we meet at conventions or something, and our common interest is comic books or whatever it is that I'm doing or presenting. So it's pretty easy. But in the industry, I just I tend to try to listen to people. And when I hear them talk about something that I've had an experience with, or a show that I've watched, or whatever, I'll drum in, or I'll kind of insert myself into the conversation, and like, oh yeah, I did you see that in episode 3? It was really cool. And I try to find common interests. Sometimes it's sports or music or cars. Like, I can try to plug myself in to certain interests that are outside of what it is that we're doing. And it just makes you seem like more of a person and less of just a coworker, or someone that you met on set. I try to instantly sound like a friend, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense. But networking is super important. If it wasn't for my ability to do that and talk with people, I wouldn't have got half the jobs, that I have had. I probably wouldn't have been on the show either, because the show has a pretty extensive audition process, and a lot of it was speaking with psychologists and making sure that we wouldn't uh, just be weird. Sometimes they want weirdos, but to make sure that you can talk and hold conversation, because the worst thing that you could be on the show or on TV in general is just silent, a stick in the mud,
Yeah.
no personality whatsoever. It's hard to film that, and there's nothing wrong with being that kind of person, but to be in front of a camera and be that type of person is really hard. It's just hard to capture you in moments. Shows like that, it's all about the accidents, the happy accidents, the interactions with your fellow co-stars, uh, et cetera, et cetera. It's all about those interactions. And when you aren't very vocal, or you just are a silent,
Mhm.
serial killer type person, it's really hard to capture that on camera. Like I said, I know lots of people that as soon as a camera starts rolling, they freeze and they can't talk, and I've been there too. Um, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's hard to capture on film, and so that's what most of the audition process was, just making sure whoever they cast for the show, they can throw in front of a camera and it won't be just a dud.
Yeah. Yeah, and shout out to you, man. That's probably the first time the word serial killer has been said on this show.
Hey, all the killer podcasts that are out there, and that's the first time that you've had that word thrown out. It's my pleasure to be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, but even just what this little interaction right now, you and I, like, to Walter's point, y'all, like, just to give you guys a little look under the hood, Walter and I went to high school together. He graduated a year ahead of me. We weren't like close or anything. I'm not going to act like we were best buddies. Never had anything against you, man, but like we just never really crossed paths. And
Yeah,
in reaching out to Walter and asking him if he would come and be on this podcast, it took a couple of times to actually get a phone call just because we're both busy. And I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but we jumped on. We talked about the podcast for maybe 5 minutes, and then we talked about movies for the next 15.
yeah,
And it's like you never know what the connection point's going to be, but it's amazing how you can create a connection with somebody just by finding that common ground.
absolutely. Just finding common ground, listening to the person to kind of weigh out your options and find what that common ground may be. It's so important.
Yeah. And just for grins, I wanted to acknowledge you and drop this little nugget on your behalf. You had
Oh,
the opportunity to provide the makeup and the costume, I should say, probably more accurately, for CC Sabathia and his family this past Halloween. And for those of you who don't know who CC is, he was a longtime pitcher in Major League Baseball, most recently for the New York Yankees, probably a Hall of Famer, but you did the entire piece, all of those things, and that had to be a direct result of relationships that you built. I'm curious if you could just tell the audience a bit more about how you secured an opportunity like that.
yeah, I love CC and his family. His wife Amber is who his wife Amber and her makeup artist. They're kind of who found me on Etsy. Years
Nice.
ago, they were putting together a Guardians of the Galaxy costume. Every year they do the CC Sabath or the Sabathia family Halloween, and it's so cool. They transform their garage and the front of their house into whatever it is, the theme that they chose for that year. And they have this like Disneyland like line that forms in front of their house, goes all the way down the street. I mean, it's so crazy that the police come and they block off sections of the neighborhood, and they like
Wow.
rope like a Disneyland line up to the Sabathia's house. And they just do it for the community. They basically donate all this time and money into this one night to give back to the kids and the community and their neighborhood. And it's really cool to see everybody interact. And they're so excited to meet CC every year. There's like tags on Instagram, they'll tag Sabathia Halloween. And like sometimes I'll go through them and it's just people being so excited that they got to take a picture with CC, even though you can't even tell it's CC because usually he's head to toe and stuff. But yeah, they needed some costume parts, and she found mine on Etsy and reached out. Didn't really mention who it was, and I don't watch baseball, so I don't know really anything about baseball. And she just said her husband was a professional athlete, and I needed measurements. Cece's a massive human being,
Yes, he
and
is.
she gave me measurements to try to fit some of the stuff, and it was like, wow, like 6'8", 6'9". I was like, who professional athlete? Are we talking basketball? I would have never thought baseball because the measurements I got was like a basketball player. And anyway, the first year I just sent them parts, and then the second year they wanted a little more special effectsy because their makeup artist kind of takes on a lot every year, and he was like, "I'd be cool if you could come and help and just you do this and help me do that." And he was really really cool, and it kind of just developed into a relationship over the years. And this last year was my I've been doing it since 2018, so this last year was my fifth year with them, helping them out. And usually I'll fly out and help them with the day. help them set up the makeups and remove the makeups, and it's really cool. They're wonderful people, and they're from Vallejo, which is real close to where we're from, in Martinez. And I live in Fairfield now, so Vallejo's. I actually lived in the neighborhood that CC lived in when he was out here, while he was still playing baseball professionally, but while he still lived in California. It's
Nice.
pretty cool.
I love it. And maybe just one of the final questions I'm going to get to ask you, because we're almost at time. I feel like so much on Instagram, TikTok, people see these viral videos, viral posts of someone's work being worn by a professional athlete or by a celebrity. And obviously that's like a dream for a lot of folks. And as somebody who is an artist and is actually making money doing it, what final pieces of advice would you give to people that have creative passions, maybe create really quality work, but just need that little extra push to really start monetizing and making a go of it?
I will say, as much as I hate admitting this, and I wish it wasn't like this, because I don't like social media. It is so vital and important. I would say 50, maybe 60% of the business that I get comes from social media. So it's really important to post and to, I don't I would say, leave, if you're just speaking from an artist perspective. If you're a podcaster, or you're someone who gives their opinions professionally, like that type of a field, this doesn't apply to you. But if you're an artist, I would say, like, just make your social media about your art. Leave your opinions on politics and religion and sports and all the things that can be divisive. Don't leave that out of your social media. Just make your social media like your portfolio and treat it
Mhm.
like such. Comment, like, share things that are relevant to what it is that you're doing. So I do special effects makeup. I'm constantly commenting and liking and sharing other special effects stuff that I see on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff, just to try to fit in the algorithm and get my stuff seen as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I don't do it as often as I could, but if you want to utilize that tool and you want to make the most of it, you just have to be pretty diligent about daily liking, commenting, posting, sharing, because social media can be such a useful tool. Like I said, most relationships, like, I've worked for the Jobs family, for Apple, Facebook, those things, directly from Instagram. Like, they saw my Instagram, they saw that I'm in the area, and they hit me up through that way. So it's such a useful tool. You have to, in strictly speaking, for like artists, creatives, use it like a portfolio.
Yeah. Super well said. And folks, sometimes it might feel like a necessary evil, but to Walter's point, like, he has a flourishing, thriving business, plenty of opportunities coming his way, probably more projects being offered to you than you can accept.
Yeah, for sure.
And at some point, the proof is in the pudding, and you never know who's going to see your work and what opportunities might become available just for the effort you put in to put it out there. Walter, we are running out of time here. Where can people follow up with you off of the podcast, connect with you directly, see your work, learn more about what you do?
Yeah, what I predominantly use is Instagram. I'm Waltimus Prime on Instagram. That's where I post most of the work. I try to be present on other platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and I everybody keeps telling me to get a TikTok. I'm so anti social media that it's hard for me to want to get a TikTok. Maybe I will eventually. I don't know. But definitely on Instagram pretty daily. I try to make that like my main portfolio.
Yeah, and we'll be sure that all of Walter's links, social media, are made readily available as a part of this episode, so you guys can not only see some of his incredible work, but connect with him as well. And Walter, final question I have for you. I ask everyone on the show, what are you acknowledging yourself for today?
Wow, what a question. Well, I try to be better every day than I was the day before. It's pretty cliche, but yeah, I just acknowledge the grind that it's been, and I'm a lot better today than I was yesterday, a lot better today than I was 5 years ago, and hopefully I'll be better tomorrow than I was today.
Yeah, man. And I acknowledge you for being here today, but being here in a way that I know for sure has inspired people, has empowered them to take action on their own goals and dreams, and just for being giving with your time and your energy. I know you got a super busy schedule.
I really appreciate it, man. This was pretty fun.
Awesome. And folks, for those of you listening, please like, please subscribe. Again, please share this with somebody if you got any value out of today's conversation, which I'm positive that you did. Please also give this a 5-star review, particularly if you're catching this on Spotify. So conversations like this, folks like Walter, can be heard by more and more people, makes the search function more relevant. But again, everybody, this has been your Inside Track to Success. I'm your host, Stewart Kraintz. We will be back next week with another amazing guest or message. We'll see you then.